Greetings, Acolytes. Today we talk about something alien for the first time on this channel. And no, I don't count chaos and demons because they're just emotions turned into sentient beings. Just a heads up, if I sound off, it's because I am sick at the time of this recording. Let's go chronologically with who came first to the galactic stage. First up, we have the Necrons, formerly the Necron tier. The Necron tier hailed from an irradiated shithole of a world where every member of their species was basically guaranteed to die of cancer before they grew old. One day they found some magic dust and decided to give the dust bodies made of living metal, necrodermis. Necrodermis is a self-repairing, extremely durable material that can be used for almost anything. So once the space dust had their bodies, it was revealed that they were the gods of the material universe, called the Catan. They offered the Necron tier a way to become immortal, and never suffer their cancerous lives again. The Necrons took this offer, a decision many of them would regret for an eternity later. The Catan had deceived them, and while they got their immortal bodies, made of the same necrodermis, they also lost their souls in the process. They could no longer feel anything physically, and almost all but the nobility lost their personalities and sentience, becoming nothing more than mindless drones. The Necron tier had become the Necrons. After the biotransference, a war was declared against the Old Ones, a race of psychic space frogs who often seeded planets with life and shared immortality with their creations, something they had previously denied to the Necron tier. For this war, the Old Ones made several races, the big two being the Krorks, the ancestors of the now Orcs, and the Eldar. We'll talk about that soon. This war will be remembered as the War in Heaven. After the war, the Necrons decided it was time to take back their freedom from the Catan. The leader of the Necrons, the Silent King, had the Catan shattered and locked away in Tesseract vaults, becoming batteries for the Necrons' immortal empire. Once the war against the Catan had also ended, the Necrons decided it would be best that they slept and waited for the rest of the galaxy to die out. And so they did, going into stasis across entire planetary tomb complexes, making the planets known as tomb worlds. Now, 65 million years have passed, and the Necrons are reawakening, intent on reclaiming what is rightfully theirs, the entire Milky Way galaxy. The Necrons use a variety of weapons and technologies that all look like magic to outsiders for how advanced they are. Their subfactions are called dynasties, as the Necrons are reminiscent of ancient Egypt. They have no psychers because they have no souls or bodies of flesh. They cannot be corrupted by the forces of chaos for the exact same reason. Their goals are vast and varied amongst their dynasties, as are their doctrines, but they all possess overwhelming firepower and technological superiority. Every time a Necron is felled, their reanimation protocols and necrodermis bring them back together and back to what could be called loosely living for them. And oftentimes they are teleported away as well. As such, Necron lords are sometimes trapped in stasis when defeated to prevent their escape and return. With that, we've covered the most ancient civilization in the 40K galaxy. Time to talk about the one who gave birth to the youngest Chaos God. The Eldar are the second oldest race in 40K. A race of psychic space elves. They were around during the War in Heaven against the Necrons and were a race created by the Old Ones. For them, we'll talk about their rise, fall, and the remaining factions after they accidentally made Slaanesh in the Eye of Terror. After the War in Heaven, only two major races were left, the Eldar and the Krorks. The Eldar basically had free reign over the galaxy for the past 65 million years or so they were living in a utopian bliss. They could reincarnate after death with perfect memory. They never had to work, as they could just think of what they wanted, and so their psychic drones would deliver it, responding to their thoughts. Eventually, they got bored. Little fact about the Eldar, they experience emotions and feelings at 100 times the intensity of human beings. And like humans, when they're bored, they start doing stupid shit. They started trying out more exotic things, drugs and rare and more wild foods, then maybe a bit more intense or impactful music, and eventually full-on murder orgies. All these intense emotions and sensations began flooding the warp as these emotions began to coalesce. Some Eldar noticed what was happening and began to flee from the center of the Eldar Empire. Eventually, this escalation of psychic feedback created a critical mass, and so Slaanesh was born. Slaanesh's birth tore open the Eye of Terror, and many Eldar died instantly, devoured immediately by Slaanesh. From here on, the Eldar had to limit their psychic potential, otherwise Slaanesh would consume their souls. Slaanesh's birth killed almost all of the Eldar in the setting, and killed almost all of their gods. The only ones left are Isha, who's a prisoner of Nurgle, Kegarak, the Laughing God, and Cain, the god of war and murder, different from Khorne, who's the named character punching bag in the setting. Four major groups escaped the fall of their empire. First is the Craftworlders. They escaped on these massive ships called Craft Worlds when they noticed the psychic impact of the Elders' debauchery affecting the warp so drastically. They still have psychers, although they limit their use so as to not be devoured. They now follow a path system, a disciplined way of life where you hone your skill and craft to perfection. Their craft worlds now roam the galaxy, doing their best to ensure their own survival. They use these special stones called soul stones to capture their souls upon death so that they aren't devoured by Slaanesh. These souls are then placed into the infinity circuits of their craft world, acting as an artificial afterlife. The second are the Exodites, Eldar who saw the writing on the wall as it were, and left for Maiden Worlds. Maiden Worlds are paradise worlds reshaped by psychic terraforming to be perfect for Eldar habitation. The least technologically capable of the remaining Eldar, these hippies live lives of hunting and gathering. Their souls are protected by the world spirits, where their souls go when they die so they don't get devoured by Slaanesh. The third is the Dark Eldar. The most technologically capable of the remaining Eldar, they have no psychers, but they still get to keep their reincarnation. This is because they have cloning technology so advanced that you can be revived so long as they have any remaining biological matter left of you, soul intact and everything. They reside within Kamara, a city set within the webway itself, a tunnel system set between reality and the warp. Now just because I said tunnel system, don't think it's small. Kamara is said to be the size of a solar system with constant-sized coliseums. The Dark Eldar discovered that they can preserve their souls through the suffering of others. As such, they make raids on real space to capture as many people as they can to torture them. The last major faction is the Harlequins, the followers of the clown god who also inhabit the webway. They live within the Black Library, a library containing all knowledge in Warhammer 40k. The Black Library is guarded by the laughing god of the Eldar, Kegarak. He keeps the souls of his followers safe upon their demise, taking them into himself for a peaceful afterlife, rather than an eternity of being tortured by Slaanesh. They go out to enact the will of their clown god, so that one day he may kill Slaanesh in the greatest joke of all time. There is a fifth faction called the Ynnari, but Games Workshop hated them so much that they axed their trilogy 2 books in, and they are only remembered for reviving Rabute Gilliman. Up next we have the third oldest race in the setting, the Orcs. Created for the war in heaven, we have the Orcs, descendants of the now extinct Krorks, Trajan's Vault notwithstanding. A race of semi-psychic fungus, the Orcs have a singular purpose in life, to fight. There's little to say for their overall history except for the War of the Beast and the War for Armageddon, but I don't know enough about those to talk about them at length, and in short, they're just orcs fighting more things. Short version, they are the largest recent orc invasions of the galaxy. The reason I called the orcs fungus is because they reproduce by spreading spores when they die. This means that orcs are often referred to as infestations, as there's no way to get rid of them once they reach a planet fall, short of exterminating the planet. Granted, these infestations can usually be contained once the invading force or resident orc population has been dealt with. The reason I call them semi-psychic is because on an individual level, most orcs aren't what you would classify as a psyker. Not to say that orcs don't have psykers, it's just that most of them don't have that kind of control over the energies of the warp. It's that their technology works in the power of belief. For example, they believe the color red means fast, so they paint things red to make them go faster, and it works. As a general rule of thumb, orcs technology doesn't work for anyone else. The orcs have two gods, Gork and Mork. One is brutal yet cunning, the other is cunning yet brutal. They're very fun to read about and very goofy, like the overall vibe of the orcs. Not that you should think any less of them for it, they're actually horrifying in universe to face. Of course we can't have fantastical races like orcs and elves without dwarves, though. Up next we have the Leagues of Votan, the new dwarf xenos faction to 40k. Now those of you who might be in the know might be pointing out that the Leagues are technically part of humanity and got separated during the Dark Age of Technology, and you're right. Technically the Leagues of Votan are abhuman factions rather than xenos. But the Imperium considers them xenos and they're listed as xenos on the Games Workshop website, so here we are. Leagues of Votan were originally a group of genetically engineered humans sent to the center of the galaxy where the conditions are hellish to extract resources. They are sent with these massive supercomputers called the Votan. The average member of the Leagues is called kin, with Ironkin being the robotic companions. The Ironkin are actually treated just as well as their flesh and blood brethren and are often seen as equals. Like traditional dwarves, the Leagues are very conservative and very rich. They live in their strongholds and expend as little resources as possible in order to survive. They don't live in luxury by any means, but their day-to-day lives are still more comfortable than that within the Imperium. Not that that's a high bar to pass. Considering that they have the Votan themselves still from the Dark Age of Technology, that means that they still have a lot of technology left overall from the Dark Age of Technology that the Mechanicus would give anything to have. I wish I could say more about their history, but they're the newest faction to the galactic scene and only have one book aside from their codex at the moment. Side note, but they have a sub-faction called the Deep Rock Kindred. Rock and Stone, I wish we had more on them. Now that we've covered the generic fantasy races plugged into a sci-fi setting that's technically a fantasy setting but isn't, it's time to move over to something unique to 40k. The Tau are a unique race of blue people who draw inspirations from parts of Asian culture while also being something entirely unique. They are often called weebs for this fact, as well as communists for their form of government, although it's entirely incorrect. They're also the only faction that's a collaboration of multiple species working together towards a greater whole. The Tau are a blue bipedal race with hooves on their feet and speak in a dual tone. They have two majorly known allies. The Kroot, a tribal warlike species that evolves based on what they eat, inheriting the traits of their prey. The other is the Vespid, an insectoid race that don't get enough time in the spotlight, and I don't know enough to talk about them properly. They do have humans in their empire as well, but they aren't as prevalent in the lore, despite the fact that they probably outnumber the entire Tau Empire's population on each world that joins. The Tau Empire is run by a caste system, where everyone is born in one of 5 castes. You cannot switch castes, and you will always be born into your caste for life, and your parents will be the same caste as you are. The most commonly known caste first is the Fire caste, the warriors and their soldiers. They're the only ones you'll ever really see on the tabletop, except maybe for an ethereal or an air caste pilot. The Water caste are diplomats, because the Tau are the only faction in 40k with a section dedicated to talking to people instead of just killing them. The Earth caste are the scientists, engineers, and other main labor force of the Tau Empire. It's a shame we never see them on tabletop, because I would love to learn more about them. The Air caste are the pilots. From starships to airships, the Air caste are another caste I would love to see more of, but will never accept for the idea that they're piloting some of the Tau air vehicles on the tabletop. And finally, the Ethereal caste. They are the rulers of the Tau Empire, and as such are at least numerically significant. It's been speculated they use mind control or something, but nothing's ever been proven. They are, however, psychers, and other Tau almost can't defy them in their presence. On a technological level, the Tau generally are above the Imperium in what you'd see day to day, but once you see the massive scale stuff the Imperium has, the Tau can't really compete. They're mostly known on tabletop for their battle mechs and one very special gun called the Railgun. It's got a 72-inch range, so to find out if it hits something, I can basically just lay across the table. One attack, thank God, each, but with a 4 up, it might as well be a 3 up, considering the bonuses to hit from drones and the like. Strength 20, so you're always rolling for 2s or 3s, and AP minus 5, because fuck you. Oh, Custodes, the Emperor's Finest? Fuck you, you're taking these wounds. 1d6 plus 6 wounds each, with devastating wounds, mind you, so fuck you even more. And to top it off, you're allowed to bring 3 of these according to official rules. Enough of me bitching about that though, I'm mostly salty because the Game Master running the old Rogue Trader TTRPG won't let me have the cool ones. For the grand finale, the most recent faction to grace the galaxy with their presence, the Tyranids. No sci-fi setting would be complete without the unending horde of insects that just want to consume everything. Although this time the insects are kilometers long and will take the atmosphere with them when they leave. The origins of the Tyranids are unknown, but we do know the history of them within the Milky Way galaxy. They originally invaded the world of Tyran, hence the name. We do not know what it calls itself or even if it has a name for itself. I am referring to it as a singular entity because the Tyranids are controlled by a hive mind, a singular guiding consciousness that directs the uncountable trillions of life forms. This works via psychic link that uses certain bioforms as synaptic nodes or whatever to act as relay beacons to lesser bioforms not important or big enough to warrant the necessity of a link. The Tyranids have no technology as we would recognize it, everything is entirely biological. Their guns are biological, their ships are giant organisms, and they don't have any vehicles as we would describe them. Instead, they have large bioforms that give birth to smaller organisms mid-battle to deliver them to the front lines. One of the major Tyranid strengths is their adaptability. Mid-battle, they will adjust their tactics in an instant, and they will adapt to weaponry of their foes. For example, if they are dealing with Tau pulse weaponry, they can start making bioforms that secrete a special mucus that diffuses the weapon's attacks and make them practically useless. The common tactic with dealing with them is to shoot the big ones, as the Blood Angel's successor so wonderfully put it in The Devastation of Baal, a book and event I will be making videos on at some point. This is because if you kill the synaptic links, the hordes go feral and become creatures of pure instinct with no tactics. This makes them rather easy to kill as they just rush you with no regard for their own lives and their actions are rather predictable. The last big thing about them is what makes them one of the biggest threats to the galaxy in my opinion. They have approached the galaxy from every direction, including beneath the galactic plane. This means that they have surrounded the galaxy. No other faction has matched the true scale of what the Tyranids represent as a threat to the galaxy. Humanity can destroy planets and stars, but that means nothing when the insects have the entire galaxy already in their mouth. As always, thank you everyone for watching and making it this far in the video. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, feel free to post them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking or even subscribing. I stream Wednesdays from 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/Brother Sendarax, link posted below. I stream whatever game piques my interest at the time, so you never know what it'll be. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care out there.